Well, greetings everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fredlund, and we are officially sponsored by Running Aces. So thanks to those guys for their support. Today I sit down with Mark Hodge. If you follow him on Twitter, he's Bookmark58, and you'll find out why he's called that here in a couple of minutes. But just a great guy, great conversation, and I appreciate him taking the time to share some insights with us. But before we get into that, just a couple of quick things. A shout out for All In for Africa. We got our 7th one coming up at Running Aces here on October 28th. So mark your calendars. We'd love to have that thing even bigger than we have in the past. We typically run around 140 people, and then we have a whole bunch of rebuys, and it's a great time, a bunch of bounty prizes. So half the money goes to charity, the other half goes to the prize pool, and then we overlay all of these bounties, and it ends up being a pretty good prize pool at the end of the day. So if you want to donate a prize, that would be awesome. If you want to be a bounty, let me know. We can still get you on the poster, on the flyer, get your picture out there as one of the most wanted folks. So get in touch with me if you want to do that. And then secondly, let's just hear a quick word from Running Aces, our sponsor, because I didn't take time during the interview with Mark to build in any breaks. So let's hear from them first, and then we'll get into the interview with Mark Hodge. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack has the best poker room in Minnesota, featuring 24/7 promos on all cash poker games, including earning $2 per hour in comps, plus the most player-friendly tourney structures. Visit runaces.com for daily promotions and the tournament calendar. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, the official sponsor of Rec Poker. All right, well, everybody, I'm sitting here with Mark Hodge. Mark, first of all, thanks for taking the time.
You're welcome.
We're sitting here at Running Aces, so it's a little bit noisy in the background, but that's
right.
kind of a fun vibe, right?
Absolutely.
As we're preparing
first and second tonight on the Tuesday night tournament. What do you think?
Yeah, let's make the call, right?
Right now.
You and I are going to go play the deep stack after this.
Exactly.
So this is the prediction, the final. I always tell people if you're on the Rec Poker Podcast or you play All In for Africa, you do well. And so here you go. I'm helping you out tonight.
We just need to see if we can keep Max Havlish away.
I know, but he's going to be here.
That's okay. We're going to be the best. We got to beat the best.
We're going to nuke Deuce Nukem.
There we go. Nuke the Duke Deuce Nukem. All right.
Nuke the Duke or whatever, yeah. Well, anyway.
Nuke the Deuce.
Well, I've been trying to connect with you for a while, and I know I've had to reschedule some things, and so I'm finally excited to sit down with you. You and I played together just a little bit, but
right.
I've kind of watched you from a distance and watched the MSPT caches kind of rack up, and I've always respected your game, so finally a chance to learn from the wizard himself. And I saw you in the World Series of Poker. I took the picture of you, and you probably thought I was stalking you.
Yes, I thought that was great. I showed my wife. I showed everybody I was playing with my 5 seconds of fame, where my backpack and my MSPT sweatshirt and my Twins cap give me away on a side angle sitting at a table.
Right, as they were just like scrolling through the whole crowd of people playing the main event. I'm like,
exactly.
Hey, I think I know that guy.
That guy I know.
Well, let's start off a little bit. Just kind of tell us, what's your story? Who is Bookmark? What is it, Bookmark 58 or what's your Twitter handle? Bookmark, who are you? How'd you get into poker? What's your deal, man?
Well, my deal is right now I am retired. I've got 3 sons and 8 grandkids, and I do a little bit of part-time substitute teaching, probably tutoring and high school math, and we'll come back to that later. But I have good flexibility with my time, and when I had retired originally a number of years ago, I started playing the limit games. Back then it was the 8, 16, 15, 30, basically as a regular at the 15, 30 game, which then became 20, 40. So a lot of guys that I played with there started playing in tournaments.
Okay.
And the Bookmark is my board name at Canterbury.
Oh,
and
okay.
I got it because there were multiple marks at that table at one point. And Elaine, for those of you 15, 30, 20, 40 alumni, well, no, Elaine is, she named me Bookmark because when I played the limit game, I was always reading a book.
Okay.
Right. So to show you where my time playing that game is to now, I used to have a paperback or a hardbound book with me every time, and I'd read. Of course, then that went to the Kindle and the iPad and whatever. But what I learned since switching over to tournament poker is I have no time to read books at the table. And that's probably as good an indication of the difference between a limit poker game and a no-limit poker tournament as there is.
So why is that? Is it because you just need to focus more on what's happening, or literally the action is faster? Or?
Well, I used to play probably 3 times a week during the day. A lot of the same guys would play. the nature of limit poker is you've got not a lot of choice in how much you're going to bet. Your ability to protect the big hand is much less. Drawing hands can be pretty favorable in the right kind of game, so you're going to play those all the way through to the end. And it's just it kind of gets rote after a while. More mechanical.
Yeah.
So for a relaxing afternoon,
Gotcha.
reading a book and playing poker and was a kind of a good formula for me.
So you were the bookmark.
I was a bookmark. Yeah.
And 58 just because
that was the year I was born. And believe it or not, when you go out on Twitter or any place else, there's more than one bookmark. So there must be similar stories, doppelgangers out there. Heaven forbid.
Right. So you mentioned at that time you're already playing that's pretty big cash games for those of us recreational players.
Right.
So you must have been, have you been playing poker your whole life, or when did you kind of first get into
Like a lot of Midwesterners, I grew up in a card-playing family. I've always been really competitive. I probably didn't lose my first game of Monopoly till I was, I don't know how old.
And it probably just burned you.
Right, and so, family reunions, whatnot, all kinds of games of cards. When I was working earlier in my career, didn't have much time to do a lot of that.
Yeah.
Best I might do is a little bit of blackjack at Mystics. But once I found out that they were playing poker at Canterbury when it opened up, 16 years ago, shortly after that, I'd start to go out there. And then once I retired in March of 2002, so that's about a year after Canterbury opened.
Yeah.
And for my wife, as part of the present for retiring, made up these nice custom-made, I'll call them hall passes, that says one free trip to Canterbury, no questions asked. And she gave me 10 of those, right?
Genius.
That was great.
All right, wives, are you listening out there?
Yeah. So what happened was, for those of you wives that have gone through the retirement or not, it could be the other way around. I know there's some stay-at-home dads out there.
Sure.
So I used one. My whole life I used one. Because she quickly figured out that, Mark, why don't you go play poker today?
You know what? I kind of liked when
It was kind of a routine. Now, why don't you get out of the house? So
either pick up a job again or
Right. Okay. So I guess you could say that I started playing poker at Canterbury about 15 years ago. So as my wife wanted me out of the house. So
nice.
There you go.
And she hasn't let you back in yet. You've been
No. And she's a willing participant in this. We can get to that later.
Does she play at all?
She's not. No, she doesn't like to gamble at all.
Yeah. Okay.
She's not a gambler. Maybe she'll play the 25-cent machines to kill time out at Vegas, the 5-card draw.
Okay.
That's about as far as she'll gamble.
Okay, so give us a little bit of a framework then as far as what do you normally play now? What size games? Is it, the split between cash and tournaments? Do you do anything with
And actually, I just played tournaments.
Okay.
Yeah. I've never been a big cash player in No Limit. That has a lot to do with the state we live in.
Right.
And then it also has to do with the timing of when I switched. I kind of had about 15 hours a week that I could play Limit. And so when I decided to start playing tournaments and kind of flipped the time, that's very similar to a weekend 2-day tournament down in Meskwaki or here at Running Aces or whatever. So that's about kind of the right balance for me.
Okay.
Is 15 to 20 hours a week.
So you're still playing, that's what you're doing, and then normally you're playing the bigger...
But I'm not playing cash.
Right.
I'm playing tournaments because tournaments are much more challenging, much more interesting.
I was going to ask why the transition then. I know we don't have No Limit Cash here, but you could go to Wisconsin or you could play Limit Cash here. Is it?
Yeah, and I could play No Limit Cash out in Vegas or some of these other places where we go, like Milwaukee and Meskwaki and whatever, and try to win that $300,000 jackpot or whatever that is. But I haven't. And I just think they're kind of a different mentality.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say the No Limit tournament kind of offered me a challenge that was different, and I haven't gotten to the point where I'm still hooked. I still think I can be a lot better player than I am. I still have a lot of work to do in this kind of realm, if you will.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of stick to this.
And you play a lot of the MSBTs. Is that what your primary
I did.
tour,
so what happened was
you got like 21 cashes I saw on the MSBT.
Is that right? Yeah.
19 main event, 2 regional. Well, I've done my research.
All right, there you go.
Yeah. That's a big number. That's a pretty big number.
Yeah. You sound like you kind of have a statistical background. I'll have to ask you about that sometime.
I do. I like my numbers.
Don't we all? At any rate, a couple years ago, when MSBT, I probably played a few MSBTs in the first few years. And I enjoyed talking to those guys because they had that entrepreneurial spirit of starting something new.
Yeah.
And but I didn't play a lot, and I think I cashed once before 2015. or 2014, I guess it
Okay.
was. So 2014, I went out to Vegas to play the inaugural MSPT at the Venetian.
The Venetian, big one.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Which
And
is
that
now
was
a $2 million guarantee.
I know, and that was so cool because I saw that build. That's
Okay.
a really cool story. People go, well, I don't even know why MSPT's here because it wouldn't make any difference. Yeah, it did.
Okay.
It made a big difference. A few hundred extra Midwest players
Right.
took a tournament that was normally 450 players and turned it into a 3,000 plus tournament.
Yeah.
Big multi-day
massive.
tournament. And then, you know, it's those of you that are listening now, those of you who've been out there, you guys are the difference in this. Most of you know the story, so I'll leave that one alone. But anyway, that I played in that, and we ended up with I don't know, 2-day total of over 800 players, and I finished 12th. So I had my first big cash.
Yeah.
God, I tell you what, and there's nothing like a nice cash to make you think
It's true, right?
to make you think you're a good player.
To validate you not only as a player but also as a person.
Exactly. I was like, holy crap, I can do this, right?
Remember what was kind of the score on that then?
I want to say, 10, 12 grand,
and it was
something like that.
$1,100 buy-in, or
Yeah, $1,100 buy-in.
Yeah, nice.
$1,100 buy-in.
Okay.
So, I guess kind of a running aces, Canterbury MSPT that puts you somewhere in 8th place or something like that, 7th, 8th place, something like that. So
Okay.
it was a nice hit.
Yeah.
And so I even went as far as when I got back, I talked to my wife and I said, you know what? I think I can be better at this than I've been so far.
Yeah.
I think if I just put some time and energy into it, that I could be better. And so I made the decision then that in the next calendar year I was going to play a lot. And then I just had a lot of success to begin with. And that really kind of steamrolled.
Yeah, and you had a big year with the MSPT, right?
I did. In the December of 2014, the last MSPT event was at Canterbury, and I finished my first final table. I got a 7th place finish
Yeah.
there, so that was the first time being, at a final table. And then, as it turns out, that's where my run began.
I got to know your August 2016. You finished 4th in Sioux Falls. At least that's what the
Last year.
August 2016.
2016,
Yep,
yeah,
2016,
yeah.
and then also you had a 3rd in one of the regionals up at Grand Casino Mille Lacs, and so
right.
that's all kind of that 2-3 year window there. Where
Yeah, let me back up though, because there's a big
Yeah.
piece we're missing here. So, being the kind of quasi-planner, analytical guy that you and I both.
it sounds like you're not a
tend to
quasi planner.
be.
You're a planner.
Well, when I'm on my game, I'm a planner,
Okay,
but
fair
unfortunately not always. I'm a retired planner, which means I'm not as good as I used to be. But anyway, I actually realized that there was a different game to be played than what I played before that. I would describe myself as a limit player who went to no limit and played limit poker in no limit. Okay.
Meaning?
Way too much. Meaning that I figured out how not to get myself in a lot of trouble, but I didn't find myself going as far as I wanted to.
Right.
I was your classic. I can beat half the field almost
Yeah.
every tournament, min cash a few times, but never find
A
myself
high
going
in the money percentage, but
right,
low
but
ROI.
never
Yeah.
exactly. Never find myself going deep.
And all the
And
money
it wasn't
top three
exactly,
spots,
and
yeah.
it wasn't, and I knew that. But it wasn't until, and I still haven't got this mastered at all. But it wasn't until I learned that you have to think about the game fundamentally different. And I was along that path, but I was kind of like in a dark room, feeling my way around the walls. So I went, wait a minute. I need to go. I'm a teacher. I need to go find a teacher. I need to go learn from somebody,
Nice.
right?
Yep.
And so I said, who's the best player I know? Blake Bond.
Okay, yeah, because you didn't know me at the time.
No.
Okay, you're laughing a little too hard. Right, okay. So
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true.
it's not.
You know what? I know what's going to happen.
happen.
So we're going to do this interview 3 years from now,
Right.
and we're going to go. Do you remember that time when you realized you could have come to me?
Right.
And
Here
your
I'm-
last 3 years before.
I'm right here.
Exactly. All right. I like this. We'll do this kind of team thing.
Right, exactly.
Both make each other better.
Get there together. Okay, so you knew Blake and went to Blake. And,
Yeah. So Blake went. Oh, Mark, I said, Blake, I'll pay you. I'll take a percentage of my action. Do it.
Right.
I'm serious
Figure
about
this
this.
out.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
And he kind of went, I'm not really, I don't really do that with, I don't do that with friends or whatever. I'm happy to help you out, but I said, well, he said, well, let's just sit down. So we sat down for 2 hours, and I had a 2-hour session with Blake. One of the best 2-hour sessions, that you can imagine to have, right?
Yeah.
And we just talked poker. We didn't, Blake would be the first to tell you he's not, teaching's not, his natural thing, but he certainly knows a lot about poker and how to
if
think
you're a
about
question
poker.
asker, you can pull it
Right,
out.
right. And very good conversation. We talked about a myriad of things. He said to read these 2 books, and then, can you do this? What if you're in this situation? What about that?
Yep.
Have you thought about this? A couple things. He said, you'll never hear me say I'm card dead.
Right.
I'm never card dead. I might be spot dead, but I'm never card dead. And I kind of knew that, but it's one thing to kind of know that and then just to kind of commit to that in your mind.
That's so good. Yeah.
Just commit to it.
Yep.
There are plenty of spots out there, regardless of what 2 cards you get, and you have to commit to that. You have to commit that you can play the game well enough to find your spots out there. And it's hard sometimes.
You bet.
How many times do we talk to each other about our bad beats, because we still all love to talk about bad beats.
Yep.
And we never said something about, that was such a good spot, I can't believe it. No, we say, I had aces, or I had queens, or I had, I had a suited connector that I had to both flush draw.
It's all bad beats, or it's all listening to people talk about how card dead they were for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And
that's so much not what this game is about.
Right.
That's just so much the wrong way to think.
It's about the cards.
And even those of us that understand that, we still talk that way a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But it's hard to articulate to somebody what it means to kind of find the right spots. And so, and it's a big part of learning the game. So that was really, really a big part in talking to him. And so there were other things that came out of that. There are other things that came out of that, and some of which he was reinforcing. Well, you really do understand more than you think you do, but getting that reinforcement.
Good.
And so I bought him a nice bottle of wine, which turns out cost him more money than me, because he and Lisa fell in love with it, and he's talks about all the cases of this wine that he's. So all I can say, it was money well worth, and I should probably get a kickback on the wine.
You made that company a lot of money.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Okay.
So at any rate, so that was an important part. So then I fast forward. We do good at Canterbury. I'm committed to playing on this MSPT tour. Nice kind of balance for me of what I like to do. I enjoy talking to people around the table. I enjoy kind of the relaxed atmosphere of doing that. And that seemed to fit that. There's a lot of guys like you and I that are rec poker players that can get lucky and be effective and have a good weekend and a good score, and so that was just a good kind of fit for me to do that. So, in the tournament was long enough where I felt like I could be patient.
Yeah.
I didn't feel rushed. Like tonight, I'm going to tell you, there's going to be points where I got to hold myself back because I feel like it's only 20-minute levels. I got to do something, right?
And that's where as a even more of a recreational, less experienced player, tonight I'm excited about it because it feels deeper than some of the stuff that I play.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
when I get a chance to play some of the 40-minute levels, that stuff, I just eat it up. It's like feels like forever.
Right.
But even tonight with the deep stack, 20-minute levels, that feels like that's fairly comfortable because I'm so used to a turbo type of feel. But for somebody like you, it's used to playing the MSPTs. You're like, what's going on? We're switching again. Yeah. So
mindset's so important. But go ahead.
Is patient? No, I'm kind of as a segue to, because I think of you and the few conversations that we've had, you've taught me more than you probably realize about the value of the stack that I have remaining. Because one of my leaks is still tending to get nervous when I get down to 15 big blinds and I got to make something happen.
Right.
And punting it too early when it's not really the right spot.
Right.
And so I think about you, and I think about. You have this either as analytical or this patience or something about playing that stack and recognizing the value in that stack. But I'm kind of in a long way segueing to, I guess, what do you feel like are your strengths as a player? Like what's given you the success? Sorry, the cops are after us.
There's an edit. There's an edit coming in there.
But what is it that's given you the success? Clearly, it's not just luck. You've had skill. You've developed your game. You've learned from Blake and others. How do you characterize the success that you've had? What are the keys?
Well, I think you got to kind of develop a game that's your game. You can't play everybody else's game. You might find players that are more like your game, but there's more than one game that can be successful at this, okay? And so you have to play comfortable in your own skin, whatever that may be. And so it's at a point a couple years ago, I felt like I was there. And so I played very confidently. I had a game plan, and I was executing it consistently for a few months there. And I once participated with something with Ku and Vlad where they were looking for good questions, and my question was, what's the most important single characteristic of of a successful poker player, and there were some good answers, but I still like this thing of confidence. If you cannot play this game unless you have confidence.
Yep.
Okay. And there's a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People that's had multiple generations of the Covey stuff. And that's one of the things I did in my career was go to a Covey seminar for
Seek First
a
to
couple
Understand.
weekends.
That's the one that always sticks with me.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
But one of them is begin with the end in mind.
Okay, yep.
Okay. And so, I kind of think, how am I going to get to the end here, where I want to get to, and then you back your way up and you have goals and so on and so forth in between. If you understand, going back to your short stack comment, if you understand how to play, and you get comfortable with your small stack, short stack play, you're say between about 7 and 20 big blinds, you're not going to worry about getting to 7 to 20 big blinds. Right. Okay, you're going to pick spots and take risks, good. I guess you would call it good EV risks. I'm not sure if I've got my math all right on all that so far, but you're going to be more confident that you're not going to worry about getting to that point. So I, somewhere along the last few years, had a couple of situations where I was in a multi-day tournament where I started day 2 with that small stack and played all the way to the final table with it. Well, once you've done that once,
the confidence then comes.
The confidence is there. So you kind of learn the power of, there's some power in a small stack, and you've got to have some luck too. But so begin with the end in mind, be confident with playing that level of stack. Then you can play the next levels up along the way with a little bit less fear, if you will.
That's good. When you're talking about playing with the end in mind, are you talking about like within an individual tournament, or are you talking about for your general?
And the example I'm giving is, just say, you're in a multi-day
within
tournament.
One tournament, yeah.
Right. Any multi.
The end in mind being.
The end in mind, you want to be. Maybe end in mind is you want to be at the final table in the top 3, right?
Okay.
And so you got to get there, right?
Yep.
Right. And I'm just saying that
that's good.
A lot of people think of that and go, I need to accumulate a lot of chips quickly.
Right.
And you learn that can get you can make a lot of mistakes that way.
Yeah.
You have plenty of time to accumulate chips. There are places that you absolutely recognize that you've got to take some risks and so on and so forth. But they're not everywhere, and you can be really patient. And often the way the chips flow is more by other people making mistakes than you doing something heroic or something you can't control. So many things you can't control around the poker table, or in life for that matter.
So it's more about letting the game come to you versus trying to force the spots.
I think so. I think there's obviously some play that don't discount aggressiveness. Don't discount confidence. Don't discount trying to take control of certain situations.
But the opportunity has to be a legitimate opportunity, not something you're
don't,
manufacturing.
Don't force. Right. Don't look down and say I've only got 15, 20 big blinds in the. Right. And I'm afraid time's going to run out me. And I saw there's a lot of 7s on the board. So so let's play this 7.
7 seem hot.
Yeah. Hey, 7s were hot. How did it not come this time?
Well, so what I guess what are you actively working on things to improve, or is that as you play you're just paying attention and improving your game, or are there things that you're doing outside of being at the table to try to
be honest with you, I'd say right now I'm playing, this is my worst year of poker in the last 4. I haven't had a lot of success, haven't played well at times, gotten into bad habits, and kind of having to refine my way back and figuring out how much of this is a hobby and how much of I want to put some energy into it. So I've kind of gone back and forth this year with how much energy I want to put in the game. So
do you feel like you're actually playing worse, or is it just negative variance?
Both.
Because sometimes we look at the results and we go, "Oh, we're playing great or bad," and it's really
variance. I think in my case it's both. I've had more negative variance for a longer period of time this year than I've had before, but I also feel like I've fallen into some bad habits too. So
now you're just deciding, feel like you're at a little bit of a crossroads, like, am I going to go after this or?
Yeah. No, I mean, crossroads is a good way to put it. Part of it is just how much poker do I want to play? Yeah. How many hours do I want to put in poker? I don't want to make poker a full-time. I don't. Bless your hearts, all you guys out there that are 20, 30, 40 years old that can make a living playing poker. It's hard. Yeah. And all of you out there that are 15 to 20 or whatever coming up, make sure you got your day job, because I can't. This is a very hard place, I think, to make a living. But it's a wonderfully fun game, and just very challenging mentally, and I enjoy getting to know guys like yourself or whoever and find out what their story is, and poker, in some ways is a lot like life in terms of, so there's some lessons you can learn from it if you listen to it. But
I do another podcast, and I talk about lessons I've learned about life from poker. Got a whole series of it. It's amazing when you actually do look for it.
You probably can.
Yeah. I mean, just start with negative variance. That's one of those things. You can control what you can control, and then there's things that just happen.
Exactly.
Positive or negative.
Exactly.
Okay, so are you still playing as much then as you're sorting this out?
I played less in the late spring and generally into the summer. I didn't play as much as I have in the past. Though, I didn't go to Milwaukee last weekend.
Okay.
The last 2 years, I think it's the last 2 years or 2 or 3 years, I've made a significant portion of the MSBT events. Probably around 80% of them.
Okay.
And I'd say this year I'm not even sure if I even made half, maybe 40%. So less. I've been playing less.
Yep. Okay.
But I still play.
Yeah. Well, here we are.
Yeah.
Maybe tonight will get you back on
There you go.
Back on the train. Well, I mean, one of the things. Now, it's interesting before because you said you were always reading a book when you're playing Limit Hold'em or whatever. And every time I see you, I feel like you're always observing the table and paying attention. So that's maybe the difference between that and tournament poker. But as you're observing, as you watch, what are the things that you see where you just kind of internally are shaking your head and you're going, boy, these guys keep making these same mistakes. I mean, as a lot of our audience is newer players or less experienced players, and we all make so many mistakes. But from your perspective, what mistakes do you see us making over and over, or the people that are less experienced?
Well, I guess one of the things I would say is don't underestimate the importance of position, and that you have a certain number of decisions on every hand, and if you're in a bad position, you're in the bad position on every single one of those decisions. And if you're in a good position, you're in a good position in every single one of those positions. So position is a pretty important part of this game.
Yeah.
And learning how to play different positions is a really important part of it.
So just
I would say most
playing.
people. I would say positions more important in general than what your two cards are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and most people will basically go, my two cards are the most important thing, and that's just simply something that you need to kind of switch your thinking on.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Position has got a much better value to you, so that'd be the number one.
Okay.
And related to that would be falling in love with two cards. We fall in love with two cards. All of us do, whatever they may be, whatever the situations may be, and it's much more about the dynamics that are going on between you and the other player or players at the table that's going to have the most importance, on your success.
Yeah.
And how you do that. And
so how do you weight, some people classify themselves as field players and a lot of physical tells where they just kind of have a gut feel for the situation, and some people are more analytical, what's the right EV and this, and then some people are, what are the betting patterns of the person and what's their style. I mean, it's probably all of those things, but do you kind of characterize yourself a certain way, like what your style is in that, like what you give more weight to?
When I play my best, which is unfortunately not often enough, I'm able to balance those pretty well. I have a pretty good mathematical mind, so I quickly I know what's in the pot all the time. Yeah. I can do that in the background.
Yeah.
So I don't have to take time to count the pot much. Mm-hmm. I have a really good idea what that is all the time. So I don't spend a lot of time. It's in my yeah. And I have a pretty good idea of what the basics are in terms of what the probabilities are of certain hands and what the next card could be and what that might do to what's going on. So I try not to dwell on getting that exactly right all the time.
Yep.
I try to feel like that's kind of more of a directional thing that you need not to lose sight of, but I'm not as rigid on that part of it because I feel like I'm pretty close to having it in the background all the time.
Right.
So I try to focus more on my sense of the dynamic at the table, which primarily means most hands we end up playing or most of the chips go in the pot heads up, right? Most of the chips go on heads up, usually at the river or shortly before that. And so you're really focusing on you and that one other person, heads up, and what do you know about that person, and what have they told you about the hand so far, about their betting pattern or what's going on, what's happened before this hand that tells you something about it, and that's where I try to focus.
And so are you able to things like that. Are you able to do, like, as you're observing the hands throughout the tournament, you're sort of making a mental checklist of specific things, or are you just generally characterizing people so then when you're in a situation with them, you can just bring... I mean, what are you bringing up when you get to a heads-up situation? Are you bringing up, like, specific examples of things that have happened in the tournament, or is it more of a general...
Well, you're looking for tendencies, okay? So you're looking for whatever tendencies, whatever information that you have that will tell you something about what that person's doing. That tendency might have something to do with... how they've played big pairs, or how they've played premium hands before, and whether you're seeing something that would indicate that they have something.
So are you
like that.
just recalling that in general, or did you like intentionally put that information away into a category?
No, I don't take notes, and I wonder whether I should, because.
Notes,
but you do mental notes, but it's difficult. The amount of data that's available to you at the table on any one hand is too much.
Right.
And so the hard job is figuring out what's important and what you throw away.
That's one of my arguments. Like I don't know what to give weight to and what to put away. So okay.
Well, I think you start with it's all important. Okay. Like, here's the analogy I would give you. Poker's a lot like teaching. And I'm sorry if I digress here a little bit, but just so you understand. So my favorite, I've had a number of jobs in my life, starting with a paper route to blah 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 business and teaching. And many, many things in between. But my favorite job by far is still teaching. I love teaching. It's the most interesting job I've ever had. But one of the reasons it's interesting is because there's no doubt that anybody could argue that the best way to learn is one-on-one. I can tailor whatever I want to one person if I've got their full attention. Okay. So when you're asked to do that for 25, 30, 40 kids that really don't want to learn,
right.
That's a challenge. You're never going to have a perfect day. You're not going to be able to add your totals on your spreadsheets and they're going to bounce and say I'm done, right? You're not going to say I looked up at that extra table and I got this. I've got this set up just right. You're just never going to. You're always going to fall short, right?
Yeah.
So you always have an opportunity to be better. You always have an opportunity to try certain things and see if you can't come at it from a different direction and add to the value of the whole experience. Then it really gets interesting going back to Covey again when you think about this thing called synergy, because sometimes you don't have to do it all yourself. All you've got to do is nudge certain factors in a certain direction, and suddenly the kids are learning from each other, and there's a better experience in the room altogether. You're still short. You're still more you can always do, but you're never bored. Every day is a new day. Every day is a new challenge. Okay. Poker is a similar thing. You're never going to get everything right at a poker table. You're never going to pick up every piece of information and read it right. So you have to accept that to begin with, okay? So first and foremost, know that it's not going to be perfect. You're never going to get it 100% right. Now, I've heard, maybe I'm wrong, I've heard people say they played perfectly.
Yeah.
Okay. And I believe that there are probably some people that can do that, okay? But they're saying playing perfectly given that the information that they had most of the time will tell them this, and so therefore what they did most of the time is right. That's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And you've probably interviewed some of those guys, and they're probably some of our best players. But I think it's hard to get that nailed right all the time. So you have to know that it's kind of an imperfect game. So you're constantly finding that kind of right zone for yourself that works for you. This gets back to your own game.
Right.
How much of that information can I handle?
Yep.
So let's go back to the player that's newer. Focus on basic things. Focus on things that you deal with in your day-to-day life with people. Whatever your job may be, we all deal with people. Focus on things that are kind of obvious at first in terms of this person's impatient, Okay, well, what does that usually mean if they're impatient? All right, we'll wait for them to make a mistake, okay? There's certain basic things, and then start to pick up the poker aspect of some of those things. But look for certain things that they're patterns, okay? Betting patterns. Are there people that always bet bigger in these situations or smaller? I mean, most of the stuff you're going to find in any poker book.
Yeah.
Okay, but what I'm really trying to say is that whether you read it out of a book, whether you hear it on a podcast like this, or wherever you get the information, kind of have a game plan yourself that says, I'm going to go through a process on every hand. I'm going to take the information I'm learning, I'm going to look at my two cards, and I'm going to make a decision what I'm going to do.
Right.
And I'm saying that the more you can pick up the information around you and make it actionable, the better player you're going to be. Okay. But you got to figure out how that works for you.
Right. No, that's good. That's good.
So,
and so, do you have like it's so good because I think one of the things that I've talked about on the podcast is I'm very good at observing. I'm paying attention to what's going on. I'm like, oh, they raised bigger there. Okay, I get it all. And then when it comes to the recall part, it's not there.
Right.
And so I have to understand my own limitations and my own capability and say, okay, how can I create a construct for decision making that maybe doesn't involve that which other people are able to include? Because I think I spent a lot of mental energy on that, and if I'm not able to recall it, I should be spending my mental energy on something else.
Yeah, let me come at it this way. So when you sit at a table, we're usually 9 or 10 people at a table. Okay, well, you know one of them, that's you.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I kind of know one of them.
Right. So I will tell you, sometimes we get that one wrong.
Sometimes when I make
sometimes
a
I do something, I go,
guy?
what was I doing there? So you're right. You got to get that one right too.
I know myself better than the others.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But to be honest with you, it still comes down to really some basic things. Poker's a struggle of power. We deal with power in every aspect of our lives, right? The more powerful your game can be, the more you're going to succeed. Okay? Well, power is successful. Usually you start with the weakest, right? So where are you going to get your chips? When you sit down at the table and you look around that table, you got to ask yourself, where am I going to get my chips?
So you go full on Darwinism here.
Well, I'm just saying that's if there's a player that you know is really tough,
where's the
and you have a bad history of in terms of how to read, how to play against or whatever, then stay away from it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of common sense, okay? Sometimes it's not just a player. Sometimes there are players that we play well against in certain situations and in other situations we don't. Know what those are, okay? Or types of players or whatever. But what I have found is the most important is whatever you decide as it relates to that is do it confidently. Whatever you do it confidently, okay? If you've decided that you and I are playing and we're down to, the turn of the river, and you have your 15 big blinds, and I've got my 30 or 40 big blinds, and you think I'm trying to push you around, and you think you've seen something from our play together that tells me there's a high degree of confidence we are, then play back at me that way, with that in mind. Either with letting me spew off chips to you with your big hand at the end, making a hero call or whatever, or by basically saying, I'm going to put the pressure back on you right now on the turn with this stack, whatever it might be. But you've already kind of figured out there's a place that you think that where we play head-to-head that you have an advantage and you can play, that you've seen. Then when you decide that, go do it confidently.
Okay.
Okay.
So what's the key with confidence? I mean, having confidence. What's the impact of that?
Well,
is it because it portrays strength to
the other
your
players,
opponent, or is it more for your own personal?
It's both.
Yeah.
It's both. Every time we don't act confidently, the other players pick up on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we're more vulnerable.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
This game's a lot about aggression. All things being equal, the aggressors have got an advantage.
Right.
If you're a weak aggressor, you're not really an aggressor. Okay. So if you're playing in a hand and you're meekly, I did it on Sunday. I played in the same tournament on Sunday, and I found myself raising from position with a mediocre hand against a good player in the big blind, and I missed the flop entirely. And I, kind of hesitated on my continuation bet and just wasn't as confident in putting it in. And I got exactly what I thought I was going to get. I got a raise back, and I folded.
And you think that was because they detected
Yes.
the confidence? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Wow.
But my mind was straying. I was thinking about something else.
Right.
I was playing sloppy. We'd just come back from break.
But you weren't. So you didn't
I didn't have my head in the game entirely, and so I paused. I could tell the pause was picked up, and I put a bet in that said I'm weak.
Okay.
All right. Now use that next time, and when you're really strong, do that. But,
right, exactly.
But in that particular case, it was just my head wasn't back in the game yet, and I was just playing sloppy. So whatever the case may be, I'm just saying if you're going to do it confidently.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I do it all the time.
Yeah.
But you're better off if you do it confidently.
Yeah. Whatever you do it with confidence.
Yeah. Do it with make your decision, and then execute it with full confidence.
Yep.
I think that's important, and it'll kind of carry over.
Are there other things that you see players doing that you pick up on, whether it's those sorts of lack of confidence things, or if is it betting patterns, or you already
gosh,
playing
there's so many things, but I can talk about things I do wrong. I just talked about one of them there. I think if you're really predictable, if you do the same things in the same situations all the time, people are going to pick up on that over time.
The good players will pick up on that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which I think is part of the big jump from some of us playing the 30s, the 50s, the 100s to playing the 280s and the 1100s.
Right.
Also, people are noticing. People are actually paying attention.
Right. That's true. There are players that I think try to be cute their goal is to put a bad beat on somebody else. Their goal is to be sneaky.
Yep.
And I think that's fine if that's what they want to do, but it's not a winning strategy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a winning
They get
strategy.
that one moment of glory, but
Exactly, but you tend to pay a lot for it on the other side. So I go back to what I said before. Figure out what kind of player you want to be, you know, and figure out what your strengths are, and then try to play to your strengths, okay? And if you find, like I found a few years ago, I'm hitting a wall, I'm not getting where I want to be, then step back and go figure out. There's so much information available out there. There's too much information available out there, right? But you know, whether it's talking to somebody you know that you trust, that knows you, that can give you good feedback, whether it's playing different levels in different tournaments against different people and trying different things. There's a whole bunch of ways you can do this.
Yeah.
But I mean, just make a commitment to, if you want to get better, this game is not rocket science in terms of you can get better by, you know, you want to be a better golfer, you go out and play and you work on your short game and you play 3-4 times a week and you
get help where you need
you get commit to it, right? You can take lessons or whatever. This game has, you know, similar aspects to it.
So as I keep thinking about, like, we got about 10 minutes left, but I keep thinking about, like, the framework for decision making and some of those things that I'm still wrestling with, even though I feel like my game's improving. I'm still wrestling with some of those things, and it feels like so much of it just comes down to hand ranging. I mean, your hand versus other people's range, or their perception of your range. Is that like the general construct that you use, or how do you think about decision making? Because I think it seems like people say, here's all the factors that you should consider, but it seems like every one of those, whether it's stack size, type of player, everything influences their hand range.
I feel like you're asking me, is hand range the most important thing?
Well, ultimately, or are all the other important things, ultimately they just feed into hand range, and that's really where you make your decision? Or maybe I'm asking you, what is your construct, or what are the most important things when you're thinking about a decision?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you have to think about too is kind of what we talk about line, what kind of line you're going to take in a hand. Remember, you've got kind of you got an idea of the range of possibilities of how this hand might go pre-flop, and then of course after the flop. Okay, and so you have to have some framework in your mind of what might be a profitable line
So just
you can
thinking
take.
ahead of
And not just think about what you're seeing right now.
Yep.
You know, I mean, there are easy things. I'll give you an example of an easy one. So let's say you have, I don't know, what's a good example here? Let's say you have a queen 10 suited, and you know, there's a board where you have a 10 and it's second pair, and you think there's a good chance you might have the best hand at the table, but it's a multi-way pot, right? And it's early on, and people just don't throw their cards away till at least the turn early on.
Right.
You know, it's hard to raise anybody off their hands, and so you look out at the board, and you know, if you hit a queen, that's going to bring some people's straights into play. Well, why are you in the hand anymore? You know, which is a lot different than if you're later in a tournament and you've got that same queen 10 suited, and maybe you're in middle position in my first example, and in the second example you're really in a heads-up situation, and not only that, you have a pretty, you know, you have a 2-to-1 stack size over the other opponent, and you're on the bubble, and they're trying to make the money. Okay, well, gosh, you have a monster right now.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, it's possible that one person might, you know, a queen might give them, you know, a straight, but because you can put so much pressure on them, they may not even going to get a chance to see it. So I'm just saying, there's kind of what I mean by, you know, think about what's the big picture of the line. How do you expect to make money on this hand? How do you expect to be successful in this hand? Well, those same two cards are in two different situations. They're totally different. All those things you said before about hand ranges and stack sizes and tells that you've seen and position on the table and all that means something entirely different in the one situation than it did in the other situation. Okay.
So it's really, you have to start top down. What's the overall situation, tournament situation? Who's in the pot? What's their situation?
So the way I think about it, early on in a tournament, I think about, okay, early on in a tournament, you can't win a tournament in a multi, but you can lose it by making, you know. So you try to stay away from, you know, trap situations.
Right.
But you try to be in hands with weaker players where there's a better chance you're going to pick up chips, and maybe in fact somebody's willing to give away their whole stack in a given situation. You got to kind of figure your way around in that. Later on, middle of the tournament, other points of the tournament, you got other thoughts going through your mind. So those start your high-level framework of how you're thinking. Then maybe you think about what position you're in second. I'm just saying something like that.
Generally.
Then within that position, you're going to play certain hands, and then, and so it kind of, I guess there is kind of a hierarchical thought process that you could go through. I tend to think of them kind of.
You think that's just kind of a natural thing for you because of experience?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
probably.
second nature now.
Yeah, as you can tell, I don't want to get myself overly structured because I feel like when you get yourself overly structured, you get into patterns, and maybe that's my weakness. My weakness is I got too many holes because I'm not structured enough, right? So we'll see. I don't know.
You can damage it either way. I think for me, it's just still trying to figure out what's that right structure, general framework without a logic.
And what's right for me may not be right for you, but the elements are the same.
Yeah,
the elements are the same. So how much information can you man? Think about. Where have you played the game profitably? Mm-hmm. How has the game worked best for you profitably? What situations have you been the most effective in? Okay.
Right.
Try to put yourself in those situations as much as possible. Where have you not been effective? Where have you not been profitable? And I can say in part, stay out of those situations more, but also what can you do to be better in those situations? Right. Sometimes you're not going to be profitable in given situations, but just by being marginally unprofitable is a win. Okay.
If it's better than what it was.
Right. That's good. So it's thinking that way.
So when you're making a decision, like you talk about which line to take, are you I guess intentionally thinking through, okay, if I bet here, I'm going to fold to a raise. Are you pretty good at actually thinking those things through? Because I think one of the things that a lot of us newer players, the mistakes a lot of us make is we take an action, and somebody takes an action that surprises us, and then we go in the tank for 5 minutes trying to figure out what to do, versus it seems like the more advanced players are thinking through already. They already know what the guy's chip stacks are. They already know if they raise what they're going to do in general.
I think you've got to think through a few of the situations that are most likely to occur.
Yeah, you can't think through everything, of course.
Yeah, you can't think through everything. And you're invariably going to find that something happens that you didn't expect, so you're going to need to stop and tank.
But typically, say if you 3-bet pre-flop,
right?
Do you pretty much know at that point already if they 4-bet, I'm folding or shoving?
I should. I'll tell you how. I'll tell you what knocked me out of the main event this year.
The WSOP meet?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize you. Oh,
yeah, I went to day 3. Yeah, you saw my picture.
I did.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this is my recall issue. I have.
No problem.
Like a half hour.
Yeah, this is a very classic. I was very unhappy with how I did this. And the guys at the table said, "Oh, that was just a cooler." Well, I ended up in a situation where I started the day with 78,000 in chips. The average stack was probably about $1.50. We had a couple, 2,200 players left out of 7,200. We need to get to half that to be in the money. Maybe it was more than that. Maybe it was 2,500 or 2,600. But the point was, the thought was at the end of the day we'd be in the money.
Right.
It turned out, that's level 15. It turned out to be level 16. They kept playing until they got in the money. So we're now on level 11, almost in level 12. And I built my 78,000 chip stack to 98,000, which gives me about 40 big blinds. So I'm fine. Mm-hmm. I'm in fine. Another stack similar to me, in middle position, min raised, and I guess we're at 1,000, 2,000 yet. And so I have almost 50 big blinds. Mm-hmm. And he raises to 4,000, and I chose with my pocket queens on the button to re-raise him to 10 to put a strong raise in. Well, what ended up happening was, after a lot of tanking on his part, he re-raised me, I re-raised him, we had it all in, he had aces, I had queens, and I lost most of my stack.
Yeah.
He had smaller money. But normally I would have gotten in a raising war with queens. Normally I don't. But I felt like I had a read on him.
Okay.
That I felt much stronger about an ace-king hand being there.
So we're really regretting the 3-bet. It was the 5-bet you were regretting, probably.
Well, to be honest with you, to go back to the hand, I regret the 3-bet. The 3-bet was the mistake. Once I threw. Okay, hold on. The 3-bet was okay. The 5-bet certainly was wrong. The 3-bet though wasn't necessary either.
Okay.
On the button, I can flat with queens there in that situation, and I leave myself so many more options.
Okay. Yep.
But I thought I saw something with his original raise and what I had seen earlier that showed weakness, and then I just jumped on that long read, and
queens
never
is a good hand.
and never let it go.
Okay.
Well, because also queens don't play well post flop
Right.
in certain situations.
Right. Good chance
And-
to overcome.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And that's a little bit of a fear thing. Like I'm worried about how to play queens after post flop. That's kind of dumb in that situation, particularly in that. That's almost like arrogance, That I well, that's not arrogance, but that's just bad play. And so, even if I made the mistake of 3-betting and then he 4-bet me back, my play there is throw him away or flat, and then hopefully I can get away from. In this case, flop ace king, I was a mile behind. It was easy hand to get away from. Let's say I do put the 24,000 in, I still have 35 big blinds. So it was really a bad play, and it was a bad play primarily because I allowed myself to ignore some of the feedback I was getting and lock way too much into other feedback I thought I was getting. He raised for a reason.
So
he has a stack smaller than mine. He wants to cash today too.
Right.
He's not putting more chips in with a really weak hand.
Right.
Okay. As soon as I got 4-bet, I'm probably behind.
And depending on his perception of you as well, depending on how you've been playing.
Right. So, I ignored certain feedback because I felt like I saw something. Well, okay, you got to take it all, you got to balance it all.
Yeah, and that's one of those interesting situations, I feel like, because we talk about this a lot where there's competing information.
Right.
You have your read, which is that he's weaker, and you've got your betting patterns, which is maybe telling you he's strong, and you got situational, that you got all of these things. Sometimes you got multiple competing things that say I should fold, and the other things that are saying I should shove. And how do you balance those things?
If I'm in that situation tonight, I'm fine with how I play the game.
So for you, you gave yourself. You weighted your read too heavily in that spot.
Yeah, but we're playing in a different tournament tonight. Tonight that's a cooler, right? In the situation. But in the World Series of Poker, main event, where there's a $15,000 check at the end of the day, if I just stay out of trouble,
and you got 40 bids,
I left myself open for exactly what happened.
Right.
That was just dumb. That was just bad play.
One person might say, well, you're giving yourself the opportunity to have $250,000 and make a real run.
That's hanging. People are going to walk on there.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Appreciate that. So some people say, well, you're giving yourself an opportunity to win it, but there's the whole ICM implications, right? Like, let's get in the money first and then take that shot or something.
Yeah. But where are we at on time?
We should probably wrap up here.
That's fine.
Yeah. Well,
how do we do on the questions?
Well, I got through a couple. I don't.
You never get through them all. You're over prepared.
I make a little script and then I never follow it. It's okay. It's classic.
That's
me.
Real life.
It really is.
That's real life.
Well, as we wrap up, I guess, kind of final words. Any words of wisdom to the recreational player, trying to encourage them to
more than anything else, have fun. Whatever you're going to do, have fun. Do it to where it's fun for you. My wife always says to me, "Go have fun" before I go outside and play. And I'll come home and I'll tell her, I made a mistake, or this happened and I lost. And she goes, but did you have fun? And I go to her, well, winning is more fun than losing.
Turns out.
So, go have fun, win some. It's more fun when you win some.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, thanks for your time, Mark.
You bet. Thanks, Steve.
All right, well, once again, thanks to Mark Hodge for taking the time to sit down with us. I just enjoyed that conversation, probably way more than I should have, and it's just such an honor to chat with all of these great players and great guys. So before I wrap up, here's one more quick spot for Running Aces, our official sponsor. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack has the best poker room in Minnesota, featuring 24/7 promos on all cash poker games, including earning $2 per hour in comps, plus the most player-friendly tourney structures. Visit runaces.com for daily promotions and the tournament calendar. Running Aces Casino and Racetrack, the official sponsor of Rec Poker. Hey, just one more shout out for All In for Africa, October 28th at Running Aces. If you want to be a bounty, let me know. Also, everybody's getting their podcast in a different way, so just be aware that there is another way to get your podcast, and that's through the Running Aces website, where we have all of the previous podcasts. We also have links and all the descriptions for each of those, so it's an easy way to see them all in one place if you don't have a good podcast app, or you're currently kind of scrounging to try to get them, or linking from some different place. So that's a great place to go. Check out what Running Aces is doing, but also get everything you need to know about the Rec Poker podcast, including how to get in touch with me if you want to do that. Okay, well, thanks everybody. On to next week. Take care.